So with the story that we are covering, wil ons graag Luitenant Colonel Kinnear se storie gebruik om te praat oor oorsig, maar ook die menslike storie vir elke whistleblower, elke persoon wat binne 'n organisasie die whistle blow om corruption to expose, and the lack of protection and what ultimately the cost is for those families whose members, like your Babita Dukaran, like soos Colonel Kinnear, soos Marius van der Merwe, soos elke man en vrou wat opstaan teen korrupsie en wat hulle stem laat hoor om te sê, laat ons reg doen, wat die koste is vir hulle familie. So we wanted to do this first podcast of Voice to Parliament to highlight that, to highlight the story of a man that came from the Cape Flats, who knows the reality of gangs and the reality of gang violence and what it means and the impact of it on our communities. A man who became a policeman, became a detective, word 'n offisier in die anti-gang unit to fight against the evil of gangsterism. I must first of all say thank you that you so willingly came and be prepared to share with us what it has meant for you the last 5 years after your husband's death. It must have been very hard. And I think one of the memories that I have of you that stands out is you standing in front of court a week ago. And just the resolute, you keep on fighting this fight. What is driving you? What is keeping you up, holding you up as you are going through the last 5 years?
Look, for me, only the grace of God. Because, I mean, Charl was my life. We were high school sweethearts. At the time of his assassination, we were together for 36 years. So nothing that I would have said 6 years ago is actually how my journey has panned out. What keeps me going is, I think, what kept him going. The fact that we love people. We have a love for our communities. Many people have asked us, are we still staying there? Why did he remain staying there with him being at the unit that he was? And our question has just, or our answer has just always been, you know, where you live does not define you. And I think our community's biggest problem amidst everything else is there's a lack of role models. And in saying that, I have nothing against people moving out of certain areas to better their livelihood, etc. But yeah, sadly, our communities are left without role models, and that was just how we made the decision. You know, be the change that you want to see. It's easy to speak from a place, but you are not in it. You're not there. You can't relate to what it is to having gang violence or having to duck and dive for bullets. Thankfully, where we live it's not that bad. But yeah, the areas that my husband worked in, that was people's lives. And he had a firm belief that when he grew up, you know, he could play in the streets. When we were in youth, we could walk home, be at 10:30 or whenever youth finished. He attended coffee bars, and he would have groups. The boys walk the girls home, make sure they're safe, and then they would all go home. Our children don't know that, or many children don't know that. They can't do it anymore. Your whole life is driven around pick up, who's fetching you, how you coming home, because we don't have that. And he believed that, I think in a strong way, that he wanted to just
reclaim our communities.
And that was his drive. He would always tell me that if everybody walks away, who's going to end up fighting?
I mentioned to you when we had our first conversation that is in our generation of colored people, there's a resolve, right? That is a deel van ons. And you and Charl represent that to me in many ways. You are part of a generation of people that grew up under the apartheid system, and yet you became something. You serve your communities. And we have so many of our colored in our generation that were driven to just serve our communities either in the police or as a nurse, the professional professions that were easily accessible at our time. You mentioned to me then that 3 things. 1, you wanted to study criminal law, and you and Charl decided that his career would take priority. Is it a decision that you, when you look back now, is it a decision that you regret, or is it a decision that you feel it was the right thing at the time?
I've no regrets. I've absolutely no regrets, because he excelled in what he did. Beyond the sad thing for us is just, and I mentioned that the day after the assassination, when the minister was there and everybody was, we lost the best of the best. And it's the first time that they see media, because media is always slandering the police, and it's the first time they see media react the way they did. And the then minister Charl said for him it was, he was a lieutenant colonel, but there was generals and others that have passed on, and he hadn't seen the reaction that he did. So I absolutely have no regrets. The only regret that I do have, and I told them that day, is that thank you for sharing it with my kids and I, but nobody ever took the time to tell my husband that. And that is the one regret that I have, that he never got to see the impact that he had. It took his death to show the impact and what he meant, not only to the police service, but even to communities, because to this day I still get messages from people that I don't know from above, so thanking me for what he did for their children. If it wasn't for him, some would say they would definitely have turned out to be gangsters.
What is it that you told me about his motto that he taught the boys?
He had a motto that he basically lived and stood by. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And in his quest, because remember, it wasn't easy for him. A lot of people, he was disliked on the police side because he arrested many of his own. But it hurt him. He would come home and you could see he was gutted. It wasn't pleasurable for him to need to arrest one of his own. There was an incident at the AGU base, I remember, where he had to arrest members and actually strip them from their ranks on the parade. And there's a video around circulation with that as well. It wasn't easy for him, but by him it was that line. Once you cross that line, he could no longer see you as a colleague. And in doing that, you become isolated, in the sense that people are skeptical. Remember, this is putting my bread and my butter on my table. So I don't necessarily want to I agree with you, but I don't want people to see me really associate with you, or that we are friends, because I'm also going to be labeled or stigmatized, as...
This is within the police force?
Yes.
So this was part of his, when he, for instance, stood up against corrupt police officials, spoke out against collusion within the police with gangsters.
Yeah.
He put his life on the line, right?
So he's my husband's success rate in his career, his conviction rate. Some newspapers refer to him as the blue torrent. When he was onto something, he wouldn't let go. So he had immense successes.
So you're saying that because of his hard work and because his superiors deferred to him, that it also attracted negativity within that.
Yes, they immediately saw, or they knew the caliber of work that he did, his work ethics and things. But because of that, there was a split in the Western Cape, in the police, and the one became known as the Very Group, and the other one became known as the Jula Group. So, and that small little rift later became a crater in the province.
Was it just a case of personalities and what we would refer to, I'm now going to refer to it as office politics, or was it just a clash of personalities, or was it deeper than that?
I think it was personal, and it was like egos at each other.
Okay, so it was superficial.
It was senior management at each other.
Yeah.
And in that, they sort of caused this rift and the split. And many people don't know that. But there was a certain group that was always victimized, and that was my husband's group.
And what was the reason for that? Was it in terms of power play, superficial power play, so nothing to do yet with any kind
The
of...
one was trying to get to the other, and you would like be called in and say, but you need to give a statement against whoever. And now perhaps you don't want to, then you start being victimized.
Yeah.
And that was the reality.
So jy's in die Weskaap, jy het 'n geweldige gangprobleem. Die polisie het 'n kultuur disruption because of personalities. And they always say a house divided cannot stand. So the circumstances within which he worked as the years progressed, the cultural, organizational culture, let's say, played a role in how things changed within SAPS. Okay. How did that affect policing in the Western Cape? If you talk about, you have very strong personalities, egos, and you have an organization that is at war with itself, in a superficial, and I say superficial, but superficial in light of all the other things that followed, I'm saying. What has been the impact of that as you see it now, as somebody who's been at the forefront of it?
Well, I see it in that officers were actually hindered, or are being hindered from doing their duties. In our case, for example, and if you read or follow our case, there's always reference made of a rogue unit. And that's exactly why I'm saying, and why I went down the road in order to have the split and the divide.
Okay.
Because that the other group became known as the rogue unit. They were tied or affiliated to crime intelligence. We know from the IPRIT report, at that stage, General Jula was the provincial PC.
Provincial commissioner.
It was the provincial commissioner. If you look at the police mandate, then you would see crime intelligence mandate is to gather information and intelligence. A lot of reference was made with the violence in KZN in July. What did crime intelligence, I mean, everybody's always on crime intelligence. So that is their job, to gather information and intel and make sure that it gets to the people on the ground that needs to execute, being detectives or whoever the case may be. So crime intelligence mandate does not really mandate them to carry any dockets. We've also got an anti-corruption unit that would investigate if there is an allegation against a corrupt official, for example. Anti-corruption will jump in. So why this particular group found the need, and this is based on the statement given by General Jula after my husband's death in the IPRIT report. He said he signed off on these members because they the way they brought it across to him, it was to investigate this corrupt police official.
We are talking about the rogue unit within crime intelligence. So you're saying, just to go back so that everybody understands who's listening, that there came a split in the Western Cape.
Yes.
And it led to a division between crime intelligence and the detective anti-gang units.
No, it wasn't the detectives at the anti-gang unit. It was against basically General Vera.
A person, yeah.
And certain people which they assumed or just put under him, my husband being one of the others as well. So that group was extremely targeted from the side. But what I feel was that the provincial commissioner was either lied to or misled, because obviously he was asked the question, why did you sign off on this little unit operating within crime intelligence? And well, that is the answers that he gave. But
the answer that he gave was, if you can refresh my memory,
they said that they on to investigating severely corrupt police officials.
Yes. What you are referencing is, and you are referencing that things changed. The first time you had 2001, where you are confronted with that actually within SAPS can act against its own and collude with gangsters or criminals. Then you have, and you progressed that and said, you became aware that within SAPS there were now two camps.
Yeah.
And it was just based off power play, organizational politics. And the chasm just became bigger and led to what you say, within crime intelligence, there was now SAPS acting against its own.
Yeah. So by 2017, that lines had been clearly drawn that there were two camps. My husband would obviously sometimes get to scenes, then this very rogue unit is on scene. He would just politely chase them away. He would get to scenes and then he sees them there. Or sometimes they're even on a scene before he is there.
But there's no criminality. This is just the one wanting to upend the other, or there is a level.
They have no need to, because remember they have crime intelligence. They are crime intelligence. Why are they on a scene?
Yeah, but I'm asking, what, in your opinion, what drives this? It's just because we don't like you guys and we want to obstruct your work, or is there an element of criminality already?
There was a lot. There was a matter of cases being opened up against my husband. And things. So there was this massive tug
of war, basically.
And my husband had a very strong personality, as quiet as he might have seemed. He was very, was very stern and firm. So that rift just kept on growing further and further apart. He also obviously he didn't sit back and just watch this play out. He was a detective and he was doing his own homework as well. So he also started to realize with whom this other group is in allegiance with. And that also started coming into play. And that is why in 2017, when my husband took up the case with the extortion, where Nafis Modak, Colin Boyson, and there was 5 or some of the others as well. But anyway, when that case came to play, and people can say 6 things, but if I take you through my journey, I believe it's absolutely the Holy Spirit. We had in our times, as I say, up to my husband's death, but there's been so many plots and plans, and God has just very often put the right person at the right place at the right time.
To expose things.
So many a times whilst they were still plotting on doing certain things to try and even frame my husband, we would get to it. We would get to know about it.
The extortion case is that restaurant extortion case where there was the allegation of extortion and wanting to extort businesses.
Yes.
And now suddenly we became aware through that case that actually gangsterism is not limited to the streets in our communities as we think it.
Yes.
Suddenly extortion is in waterfront.
That's
It's happening in the city center. And businesses are being extorted.
Exactly.
So organized crime became much bigger, much more organized. And this is, what year was this?
That was in 2017.
2017. That case is the tipping point of the change. Yeah.
That case is the tipping point.
And the names, the personalities, Moda, voice, and these.
And, you know, it's so scary that the day that they were granted bail of 10,000 rand, I remember that day. My husband got a call from within prison, and they told him, Melania, hulle gaan vandag 10 lys net aan borg kry.
Out of prison.
Out of prison.
The guys from prison is calling from prison to say that the guys are getting bail.
Yeah.
And that is the change for you.
That is the change for me, because there I realized something is drastically wrong. Yeah. Even the day that they were acquitted, and because by Nafis and them, they were acquitted on that case, my husband didn't go to court that day even. Again, he received a call. I remember he went and he attended a meeting in Paul, because again earlier that morning he got a call to say they would be acquitted that day. And that is where I realized, and after his death I had many meetings with the Premier and various others, and I said, our corruption is not within or only within our police force. Our corruption is within our justice system. And that was where I realized that.
Things has changed.
Things has changed.
Yeah. When you look at 2017, we are now in 2026, the Matlanga Commission, the ad hoc committee, we're not going to go into detail of that just for the sake of time. I remember in the 6th administration, you went to the portfolio committee on police. It was, of course, to, again, be the voice of your husband. These things that you are speaking of all the time, I saw your Maverick article as well, where you speak about how this thing has just bowled itself up. When you went to Parliament to go and really be the voice of your husband, because that's, did you present to the portfolio committee on police? And we need to be clear when you actually did that, because that was in 2022.
21st of February.
2022, that you spoke as a widow of a slain police officer to the House, to the portfolio of police. And you outlaid exactly since 2017, what has happened in the police, what your husband has experienced, the fact that he was targeted. What was the response of Parliament?
Look, I was then promised that the matter would stay on the portfolio committee's agenda, and that everything would be done in their power to make sure that justice is served. I remember the late Tina Jumet Peterson standing up at the National Assembly on the 9th of August, giving her report as from the portfolio committee, and stating there as well that this, and I remember the entire House being in agreement that the case everything should be done to make sure that justice is served. And here we are in 2026. And nothing, and if I say nothing has been done, people will say, but you attending your court. Yes, but I've always said there's two pillars here. There's a pillar where we have the accused, and then we have the pillar where we have SAPS. And the accountability and the shared responsibility that they have in my husband's death. And what I also want to bring in here and say is that people need to realize that what I'm going through is not only me. There are many, many other police officers out there.
What was the catalyst for what you are going through now? For what action did your husband take that upped the ante in terms of the attack on him personally and what your family has suffered? What upped the ante in your mind?
I think it is his investigations into CFR, which is where your gun licenses and things are. Because the question has always been raised. People will sit maar, waar kry die gangsters al het? Waar kry hulle al die bullets? Waar kry hulle al die guns? And we ask these questions. And and I think that was when he started stepping on those. Because we realized that his case in Johannesburg, which is now also awaiting the High Court, in there's brigadiers and police.
This has got to do with firearms and ammunition that gets missing from the police licenses that has been issued.
Yes.
So you saying that your husband's investigation starts, this becomes the catalyst for more persecution, let's say, within the police. You relay what you are relaying to us now, die oploop van hoe dinge beginne gebeur, daai skeiding in die polisie of verdeeldheid binne die polisie, dit lei tot jou man se brief aan die provinsiale. He starts the investigation. When does he actually put pen to paper to lay a formal complaint about what's going on in SAPS?
In 2018, he drafted a 59-page document, which he literally sent to everyone, from the National Commissioner, Provincial Commissioner, Crime Intelligence. I think there was about 11 different parties that he copied. So he copied everybody. And in that document is his plight and his plea. And even in that document, my husband, being the kind of person that he was, he only addresses, in 59 pages, he only addresses how he's hampered in his work and what is happening within the province. Not once does he even mention the harassment that I had to suffer, the harassment that my kids had to suffer, with of the row unit members following. They were camping out in front of my door, but they were listening to our phones, various things that he mentions, but still the professional detective that he is, he doesn't mention anything of his family in there. He solely addresses his work-related issues in 59 pages, where he says, hindering him doing his job, going around, and he puts all of that in there. And they then send down from the national office, they send down a contingency or delegation to come and do an investigation, which is very natural to do. I mean, you can't just go and work on a colonel complaining and just everything. So, and it was actually done twice, after his death and before his death. I don't know whether somebody thought something is going to change or papers are going to be added on or whatever, but anyway. So I investigated that 59-page document twice, once before his death and once after.
So he's a whistleblower, in fact. He's saying there's a problem in SAPS.
Yes.
We have a serious problem.
Yes.
Investigations are being hampered from within SAPS.
Yes.
This is in 2018.
Yes.
In 2022, you are standing before the House of Parliament or the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, in which you take everything that has led up to the day of his death.
Yes.
And you present it to the Portfolio Committee. There is huge divisions within SAPS. There is collusion with criminals within SAPS. My husband's death was not just from criminality outside of SAPS, but was actually enabled because of the environment within SAPS.
Yes.
I think what is very important for listeners to know is that the failure that we are witnessing through the Maflanga Commission and the ad hoc committee is a very important element to it, and it is the issue of effective oversight. In 2017, just in the story that is relayed by Nicole Kinnear on behalf of her husband, is that the divisions within SAPS gave rise to what we are seeing in front of us, that this rot had a beginning with the beginning of it is that division within SAPS, within the Western Cape, led to where we are today, where not only were the portfolio committee informed, but so were the police management, senior management informed by the letter, the 59-page letter that was written by Lieutenant Colonel Kinnear, in which he actually became a whistleblower. This is in 2018. It is to the minister, it is to all of the senior managers. And then, come 2022, the Portfolio Committee on Police is basically getting a first-hand account from a witness, the widow of a slain police officer, on what she sees as problems within the SAPS. Corruption, collusion, harassment, nothing has been done. So when we have politicians grandstanding within the Houses of Parliament, as citizens, we actually need to demand that politicians need to change the manner in which they do oversight, that politics, playing politics, does not serve the best interest of the people of this country that relies on Parliament to do their job. For us to hear that a first-hand account was given in 2022, an IPID investigation was done and an IPID report was compiled, that the Portfolio Committee on Police in the first administration, in the sixth administration, my apologies, did nothing about it, failed. The same Portfolio Committee was addressed in March last year by General Mkwanazi about the same problems within SAPS. Nothing was done. So when we talk about responsibility, we need to talk about and accountability. Every single person within senior management, but as well as Parliament, needs to be held accountable for the failure that we see today. It's important. Ons kan nie die gemors mee vat nie.
Yeah.
No, we can't.
Yep.
You have a husband who has died. He was assassinated. He paid the highest price. Your family was harassed. You suffered the biggest loss any person can. And for us, when we as politicians or as leaders within this country, when we use the problems of this country to campaign on, not to look for solutions, not to take responsibility, because that's what ethical leadership means. What we are doing is we are actually adding to your pain. It's inexcusable. It is inexcusable. The manner in which the ad hoc committee is behaving in Parliament now, for me, is a disgrace. We should actually apologize to people like yourself who has paid the highest price.
The findings, remember I mentioned that there were
Two reports, two investigations.
Yeah, two by that was done by IPID and two that was done by a contingency of SAPS.
Yeah.
The findings were that Colonel Kinnear is indeed correct and that serious intervention is required within the SAPS management in the Western Cape.
You must say that again. The first report and the recommendations, Sebs?
The recommendations and the findings from IPID and the contingency that was sent by national office to come and investigate the 59-page document that my husband drafted was that the Colonel's report indeed has valid findings and that serious and immediate intervention is required within management within the Western Cape.
This is 2018.
This is 2018. Look, I think the report came out about in 2019.
Yeah.
Around about there. But be that as it may, here we are in 2026. Bearing in mind, then we had in 2023, we had the Judge Tulari's judgment, which was also in alignment with what my husband was saying.
So your husband was a whistleblower.
Yeah.
Within SAPS, and he blowed the whistle in 2018. And because of that, his work became difficult.
He became a problem.
And he became a problem. So after your husband wrote the letter, the IPID report basically confirms that he's right, that there are elements within SAPS, and recommendations are made of what needs to happen. An investigation happens, the report comes out. What does your husband experience at this time now that he has blown the whistle within SAPS around there's a rogue unit, there are some elements of obstruction when it comes to investigations? What is he experiencing at work at this time?
Look, obviously, as you mentioned, IPID found the findings that they had, but not only did they, the committee or contingency that was sent from national office did as well. So you have SAPS themselves saying, listen, here is a problem. And I think it just became more and more difficult for him. He realized that he needed more and more to watch his back. And you could also see that, I know there was at one stage, they had like inspection, where they would inspect the dockets at whatever. And at this particular, so you have a number of people and they're doing, and that there was senior manager that said, we are not leaving this room today unless we find something in Kinnear's dockets that we can lock him up for. And that was the level that, what he was facing.
So he becomes a target.
He becomes a target.
He becomes more of a target.
He becomes a target, his group becomes a target, and he always used to tell his detectives, just know they're coming for me, so they are going to take you on everything possibly, so do your work and whatever meticulously.
So he now, your husband, is experiencing pressure from within his workplace as an officer investigating. What happens externally? Does he talk to you about, he's going after criminals now that are becoming well known. Suddenly the names like your Modaks, your Ralph Stanfields, all of that becomes part of our national conversation in terms of media. Hulle name word nou bekend. You know, it's not shadowy figures that is just. Does he tell you that there is an element of danger that comes from external or not?
Look, my husband, obviously us being together as long as what we did or what was, I could read his body language. I knew when there's something. I would get calls where I'm at work. Just make sure that you get home, get the boys and get home. Those are the kind of conversations where you don't ask questions. A message, something that is sent. I never used to question it, because how do you tell your wife to get your children and get yourself home safely? Don't open, that kind of thing. So
don't open letters and
don't open, just see that, because sometimes my boys would be at training and whatever, we would say, fetch them, get them, see that you get out. So that sort of became our lifestyle. So he, in a way, very much protected us. Obviously, he did not share his investigations per se with us, but as you've mentioned, it was all over. So we slowly but surely also started to realize that this is now not just, we've now surpassed the norm.
Would you say his investigations contributed to these names becoming part of almost our national, recognizable nationally?
Yes.
Yeah, he's yeah.
Because remember, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people perceive gangsterism as shooting, running around, that kind of thing, which it's long past that. People think they're going to Clifton and wherever, and they're hanging out in these fancy places, and
He's safe.
but they don't know who owns these places. So and that is the perception, that was out there.
Crime kom nie tot in die suburbs nie.
Ja, ou met 'n hoodie en 'n hangbroek en
So gangster.
wat met 'n gun in die rondhardloop, that's a gangster, but you are sitting lavishly wherever and you think that you are okay, but you don't realize who's the owner of the place that you're
Sitting into.
Yes.
So I remember when it became shocking was the shooting in Stellenbosch, at that very popular hangout where there was the shoot up.
Yeah.
And we became aware, but there's actually some security or rivalry for who owns the nightclub scenes and the restaurants. And so all of these cases are all interlinked. So organized crime spilled out into the decent sort of areas.
And that is where he started moving into as well, because there was a fight, there was factions.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to get, and having to pay extortion money.
Yeah. Restaurants in waterfront now needs to pay extortion to organized crime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was where he went into.
Yeah. So you'd become aware that things are becoming dangerous. He's investigating organized crime networks that has now embedded itself even into what we would see as commercial business, decent business, isn't that? When did that escalation happen where physical danger became now, you need protection?
Yeah.
When and what year was this?
2019, on the 13th of November, my husband and the late General Lincoln was up at head office with a meeting. And in that, on that day, intel had come that there were Serbians that needed to take them out. And they were looking for them. And even in our court case currently, those messages and voice recordings and things that have been played in court, the messages that were sent between some of the accused, they can't find in Vaasala, that kind of thing. And while the intel came, and the moment my husband landed, the 13th, the evening, him and General Lincoln immediately, they were placed under guarding. So my husband then came home with guarding. The guarding was to such an extent that he couldn't even drive himself, so they would fetch him, they would be there all the time, etc.
So 24/7 protection.
That was on the 13th. So we remained under protection until the 19th of December that year. All of a sudden, the evening shift just never pitched.
This is in
2019. The evening shift just never pitched. And I initially thought that was in the time, the Saturday actually was Stachy's funeral. So I initially thought, okay, maybe all boots on ground, whatever, for the funeral purposes. And well, December came and December went and nothing happened. And in January 2020, I took to the media. And
you took to the media?
Yeah. In asking the questions in terms of why my husband's protection was withdrawn.
What did your husband say?
Look, he didn't really know about it because obviously they're not allowed to speak to media. So I did it. However, he was victimized because of it.
What did he say to you?
Well, he knew my mind is made up. My mind is made up.
So you told him, I'm going to go to the media.
I didn't actually tell him. I just went. And
So jy is 'n vrou wat heeltemal
look, like I said, by then I'd realized this is different.
yeah.
And I was determined if they're not going to fight. And you know, he would have the attitude, just leave them. You know?
And you felt
I felt that he is entitled to have protection because of what he's doing. Because the evening of the 22nd of November 2019, we had guarding. We had 4 police officers outside, and we were just about to doze off, and we heard this commotion outside. And then he was about to look on his camera, on his phone, and then his phone rang, and all I heard was a person was speaking very loud, and it was from the base, from the ops room, and just said, Kolonel, hulle het sopas iemand buite voor jou huis gevang met 'n handgranaat. Sure. So obviously we all jumped up and we ran out, and
you ran out?
Yeah, we went outside to see what was happening, and then they had actually caught the guy. So the guys were sitting in the van, and then they saw this person coming down, because that was about after 12, 10 past 12. They saw the guy coming down, and there was just something suspicious about him. And
sure,
when they searched him, the hand grenade fell out of his pocket. And we now know from bail applications and the High Court case that's currently on, that there was no explosives in there. But it was also clear that they didn't know that at that time, because audio clips have been played where it said, you know, just throw it. It must just explode. Then we get our money. You may remember to wear gloves, because if forensics comes, that there's so they did not know there's no explosives in it. And so despite of that incident happening, our guarding was still withdrawn.
The incident happens and they still withdraw.
Yeah, the incident happened in November, and they withdraw the guarding in December.
And they tell you, or they don't tell you?
They don't tell us.
So SAPS removes that. Let me just ask you this question. Was there ever a conversation with you and the children to say that either by your husband or by SAPS, where support was provided, psychological support? You've now had this incident happen. You are now having additional guarding outside your house. Do they actually provide you with psychological support because you under threat or not?
No.
Okay.
Nothing. Like I said, that was one of the hardest evenings ever, because having to see my husband sit down, you know, a decorated officer, and you're still a dad.
You're still a dad.
You're still a dad, you know, and you have to sit down, my children, and explain to them where to take hiding, how to take hiding, and things like that, if anything like that should happen. And trying to reassure them that the guys are outside but there again, I realized how brazen these guys were, because as I've mentioned, we were under protection at that time. So they were going to take us out with the police officers, that was just what was supposed to happen. And that was one of my main reasons why I took to the media in January.
Yeah.
And in there, again, instead of addressing the issue, the decision is made because I'm causing trouble. At that time, we had just got a new provincial commissioner, General Matakata. And so General Lincoln still mentioned to me, his first encounter was a new PC, and I had to be her, wanting to know, you know, what's happening, blah, blah, blah.
So jy's 'n probleem.
Ek is 'n probleem. And then they wanted to see my husband, and I actually said, but why do you want to see him? He doesn't even know what's in there. But remember, in all my life or them knowing him, I was always in the background because I didn't have anything to do with SAPS. If there was any issues or whatever, it's your people, sort them out. But now, I think call it that maternal, motherly, jy nou te na aan my kroos gekom. So I go
I understand.
and then in March, General Lincoln and the provincial commissioner, they actually have correspondence back and forth where they decide they're going to move my husband back to Sea Point because that is where he came from before AGU. And my answer to them was...
The AGU is the anti-gang unit. Yeah.
And my answer to them was to do what? So I said, are you going to brainwash him between Sea Point and Fora? Because the problem is not the unit. The problem is what my husband had uncovered. So it doesn't matter where you're going to send him to, he still knows what he knows. So even there, despite of putting things into place,
They rather moved him.
he refused to move because his words were, now you're going to attack my dockets. My family has already come under attack. You're going to give it to somebody else. That person doesn't know now, but 2 weeks from now, he's going to have to read through the docket. He's going to have to know what's happening. So you're just going to endanger another life and another family's life.
So instead of putting the protection mechanisms in place, they decide we move you off the case. Your wife is a problem.
Yeah.
She's making noise in the media.
Yeah.
And so
That was an embarrassment.
And it's an embarrassment to SAP. So we just move you to a different...
and he refused.
And he refused.
He refused, yeah. So there was then intervention via the union, and it was agreed upon amicably that he would stay. And that is why he, at the time of his death, he was still at the anti-gang unit. But in all of that time, and remember, the pinging starts in March of 2020. That's the first time.
So when we talk about the pinging, just explain to people, Sabete.
The pinging was where they use the cell phone tower to track where you are. So, and people say, yeah, but that will still not tell me I'm here. But if you follow somebody, and as we've heard in the court case, my husband was pinged over 3,000 odd times. So then you know already, following, coming home, following this tower is going to be that tower, is going to be that. So you can track where he's going to.
I understand.
Because you know which towers he pings to go home.
Yeah.
So that happened, and yet still nothing is done. So they
do they tell him that, listen, you are being pinged? Yeah. And does crime intelligence actually then, are they able to say that these are the people that are pinging you?
No. They also, remember, because of this rogue unit issue, my husband never trusted Western Cape Crime Intelligence because remember, in order to do a risk assessment, they would need to come into my house. They need to come onto our property. They need to check where is like making, soos hy sou gesê dat jy maak nou vir jakkals skaapwagter.
Okay.
So in my opinion, my husband did not want to work with Western Cape Crime Intelligence.
Okay.
That was no secret. But having received the 59-page document, I think it should have been just a no-brainer that he should have had a national risk assessment, because here's a member who you know does not trust Western Cape.
And there's a problem.
And there's
Clearly.
a problem.
And the report is saying that.
Yes.
So you are saying that even though the report came out, the recommendations was made, his phone gets pinged. We are now in a new year.
Botched hand grenade.
Yeah, we have the botched hand grenade. There's still no national risk assessment done to assess the security threat against you and your family and your husband. Okay.
And later in the APRA report, it also comes out that SAP says, remember then we hit lockdown in March 2020, that due to lockdown, they were never able to do his risk assessment.
Okay.
And the last time I checked, SAPS was still essential services.
Yeah.
So there was just brazen neglect in doing that.
Yeah.
And but anyway, him being him just went on, just continued working, doing his cases. He was down in Joburg many a times, back again. In June, he made the major arrest with a lot of police officers. That case is still currently on the court roll in Johannesburg High Court. Our case here in Cape Town first needs to finish before that one can continue.
The case in Cape Town that you're referring to, of course, is his assassination case.
Yeah. So, and so 2020 basically goes on. And the first time in June, he tells me he's finishing off in December. This is going to be his last case, and he's finishing off.
And the case that he works on at this time is the case involving Modak.
Yeah, and firearms and things,
firearms and licensing, licenses being issued in record time for firearms.
He basically exposes the corruption within CFR. That is what he stumbles on. In this.
He stumbles on it.
Yeah. And obviously needs to take it further. Hence why, if we go and check, there are police officers also arrested in that particular case. And then he is in Johannesburg the first week in September, when he calls me and he says he's got a call to say that his phone is being pinged excessively.
So he's being tracked.
He's being tracked. And but then when he would go to Johannesburg, because remember now we are aware of the threat and we're trying to manage this as best possible. So we need
without the police providing you with the support that you need.
So when he does go down, remember he's doing investigations when he goes down. So then he would take a group of his detectives, but he would also take a group of what's known as visible policing officers with him. So he then, I asked him what's he going to do. He says, well, he's waiting for them to tell him where and who it is, because he said he's got a large enough crew there to go and then try and get this person that's doing the pinging. He's never supplied with that information, even though the Hawks knew who it was.
And the Hawks knew already who's tracking.
They knew who it was, because as it has come out in High Court with our current trial, is that it was said, let him go on.
Let who go on?
The person that was paying, which was Killian in this case.
So they say, leave him to continue.
And we then have a warrant officer within the Hawks that writes reports in terms of the escalation of his pings, and known to a brigadier as well. And then at that stage, General Peter Jacobs was the national CI head, but he was off sick. And nothing was done. So my husband comes back home on the 13th. Comes back home. Because they never gave him the name, and then on the 16th, which is the Wednesday, and he actually has a meeting with General Very the Monday, I know, and he comes home, and at that week, this is now the week leading up to the assassination, he was the provincial duty officer, which means all crime stats, everything, and any major things he would need to tend to. So it was a fairly busy administrative week for him. But that Wednesday, if you might recall, there was a killing in Gordons Bay, a drive-by shooting with somebody on a motorbike.
That is right. I know it very well because
Yes.
Yeah, the guy was sitting at a restaurant and somebody walked and shot him.
That's right.
In daylight.
Yes. Correct. Yeah. At that stage, my husband was still in Johannesburg. So when he came back the 13th, that Wednesday, he specifically went to go and do investigations on this
assassination,
this particular matter. I don't know what whether he had some intel or something, why he took an interest in it, why he went, but
whether it was linked.
He went. But be that as it may, that Wednesday, a phone call was made and came to the base, the AGU base, to say that daar was rond 'n tafel gesit. And what that basically means in your gangster language is that a meeting was held. And
Daar was rond 'n tafel
was rond 'n tafel gesit en Kinnear moet val. And
The message comes through on the Wednesday.
on the Wednesday to the anti-UCAN unit base. My husband, however, never receives this message. There was him and another officer. The other officers warned, but my husband is not told about it. So later that day, the Wednesday, he receives a call from the late General Lincoln. He is busy with his stats and asking him, Charl, where are you? And he says, I'm home, General. Why? And he says, your phone is being pinged excessively, like in every 30 seconds almost. So he says, I'm home. And then he asked him about his partner. And then he said, well, she's home as well. And so he said, because both of their phones were being pinged. And after the call, my husband immediately called his detectives. He put on a message and he said nobody's phones to be off because she was a single parent. They need to drive around by her, etc. and stuff. So that was the Wednesday. So later, as it has now unfolded over the past few years and all the bail applications that we've had, and also being in High Court with the case, it has surfaced that the assassination actually should have happened that Wednesday. But because of him being out with that in Gordon's Bay, I think he sort of threw the timelines and whatever, so that never happened. And then the Friday morning, the day of the assassination, the 18th, he was up fairly early. So he left for work earlier that morning because he had administrative things to do before his meeting in town. We know that they pinged him excessively. You can see they started pinging him that morning at about 2 o'clock in the morning. It also came out in the pinging where they would ping us, they would ping me, they would ping him, they would give coordinates, they would be able to say exactly where we are, estimated time to be at home because they could pick up on the towers what it was. And they also pinged him while he was in Joburg. They would say he's at this court now, he's there now, how long is going to take him to the guest house. So this is all things obviously that we've come to know now.
After the fact.
Yeah. So he then attends his meeting. From Cape Town meeting, he goes to the base. While he's at the base, for a while, the pinging stops. But he's pinged all the morning, and then the moment he leaves the base, the pinging starts again. And he just said he's tired, he's going home. At 14:48, my husband then calls my son to move his car because he was parked in the driveway. And he goes out, and as he gets onto our front stoop, he hears the 5 shots rings out. My youngest son is lying in our bed on his dad's space. His first thoughts is that it's his brother. So he jumps up, and then he just heard my eldest shouting, Pops has been shot. It was 10 to 8 minutes to 3 when my eldest son called me and asked me, Mom, where are you? And I said, I'm at work, boy, what? And he said, you need to come home, Pops has been shot. And at that moment, at that stage, I was working about 7 kilometers from home. But those of us who know Cape Town knows Parow Voortrekker Road on a Friday afternoon and it's taxis. And I just remember 2 of my colleagues, one grabbing my bags, one taking my car key. And in the time driving home, I think it felt like I'm driving to Joburg because I just can't get there. And the boys are obviously, the time is going as long for them as what it is going for me. So they continuously phoning, how far are you, where you, and I remember in one of the many calls asking my eldest, how easy? And then you just said, Mom's, Pops is gone. And I don't think it quite hit home. I think in my mind, I expected, I'm going to get there, there's going to be an ambulance, I'm going to see a lot of police, I'm going to have this yellow tape, and I'm going to, that's, and as I took the turn down the main road, sort of to come into our house, it was just chaos. I couldn't get to my house. The street was full, and
Full of people?
Full of people, yeah. And there was police, and obviously when they saw me, they, lifted the tape for me to come. And I remember as I'm running closer to my house, because remember, I've got this picture in my head now, this is going to be an ambulance, and the one thing, I'm seeing everything and everybody, but the one thing I'm not seeing is an ambulance. And I think that is when my son's words dropped. But Mama's, Pops is gone. I got there, I cried, but my boys were there. They still had the privilege, they had the neighbors in tears, because they still had the privilege to kneel by the car and to pray with their dad. And their last words to their dad was, don't worry, Pops, we've got Mamas. And so he was still in the driver's seat. But at some stage, it just clicked, that because by then, it takes a while for forensics and everything, but the people were not leaving. And I think then, it was then that it hit me. But these people are actually here for us.
They were not just bis, yeah.
They were not just bis or inquisitive. And I think that is, and then I sat there, I know at one stage I put on a jersey and whatever, because I just felt it would be so wrong of me to go inside and leave these people standing. And I stayed sitting on that pavement. And I think that is where I realized that my husband died for these people. And what am I going to do? I'm not in the police force. I can't pick up and continue where he's left off. But I knew God needs to equip me to do something for these people. And we sort of, the Friday evening, we could immediately speak about it. There was no such thing as me lying in my room, crying, my boys. So God really gave us an immense peace. And the next morning we woke up because we knew the ministers and everybody was going to come. And I told my boys that Saturday morning that I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know how we're going to get through this. But one thing I know is that we're not going to lie down and put a pillow over our heads. And the whole minister and the contingencies and everybody came, and it was all the wuzu in the zoo and as the walks bosses and everything. And I told the minister, thank you that you didn't come and bullshit us. And everybody, like, I think, had a semi-stroke. I said, because did you see that gate that you came in there? That big one. I would have thrown you out by that gate if you had to come and give me a story. Because with a lot being said about Minister Charl, etc., I genuinely that day, he was honest. On that particular day, he was bluntly and brutally honest.
That the police has failed.
He said, we failed. We failed this colonel. We failed this family. We lost one of the best.
So, Lieutenant Colonel Kinnear was a decorated officer.
Yeah. So, this picture, this one, And you can see, you've often asked me about his eyes. You will see on the other picture that I'll show you, you'll see his eyes are different. His eyes are more blue. His emotions were in his eyes. So his eyes would change either blue or it would go green. So I would be able to pick up his emotions in his eyes. And you'll see it now in the pictures. You will see the difference if you show it. But anyway, in this one, he won the Western Cape. So he was awarded the best detective in the Western Cape. And then this one, and I think that you can clearly see the difference in the eyes. Now again, there's more green. This one was the national one. We went to the National Excellent Award. And then, they came up against, obviously, it's now the whole of South Africa. And then he walked away with this one, which then he was named the third best detective in the country. So, so these are really special.
I want to ask you this question as we draw to a close is, what kind of support have you been receiving from SAPS as a family who has lost your husband, your children's father, your best friend? You've known him for over 40 years.
Yeah, for over 40, yeah.
So the loss we cannot calculate. I mean, it's impossible for us in any kind of terms, whether it be monetary, to really quantify what the loss is to you as a family. What support have you been given by the South African Police Services?
None. And that is one of the reasons why I do what I do. I know some people might feel, this woman can, just let it go now. It's been 6 years. Your husband is not the only person that's died on duty, etc., which I absolutely agree with. But one of my main reasons why I won't let go is because of the experience that we've been through. I often mention that, yes, it is a quest for justice for my husband, but my husband was not the only decorated detective. There are many out there working under the similar conditions that my husband,
going after very dangerous criminal networks.
Their lives, and probably having at the back of their minds what happened to him, knowing that we will follow our kids and stuff. So you've got all of that you're carrying with you. My quest is for not only for our communities, but we are losing our experience.
Yes. In the detective services, in the policing,
we are losing our services. Members are leaving.
Yes.
Members are joining Metro Police, law enforcement, because they don't want to put their families in that danger any longer. So our communities are suffering. We need to try, and that is why I'm using my story. We need to try and protect those detectives that's working out there.
So you have no support as a whistleblower within SAPS. He received no protection. He didn't receive any kind of support as a family. You basically navigated that on your own. Your husband dies in the line of duty. He's assassinated because of his work. And you get no support afterwards as a family as well.
Yeah.
And you say that needs to change.
Yes.
There needs to be some form of legislation. There needs to be some framework that requires SAPS to provide the necessary support. We need reform for whistleblower protection within SAPS and broader, within government and outside government, so that people are protected. And we need that support for SAPS members specifically outside of SAPS.
Yeah.
Tell me, for people who didn't know him, first of all, I discovered he sings like an angel. I mean, I couldn't believe that die geharde polisieman sing so mooi.
Ja.
Wat is vir jou een van jou beste memories van jou man?
Yeah, so, you know, even like his victims, if we could call them that.
In cases that he worked.
Yeah, because remember, all his cases were, being a detective would obviously be a murder. I mean, he didn't do assaults or things like that. So he took it so personal. He would even go fetch the families, like to take them to court. And I think in many cases, he genuinely made a promise to most families that I promise you I will find the perpetrator. Because, and I say that because of a lot of the responses that I've got, messages that I got for people to thank. As a dad, he was strict, firm, but also the love that he has for the boys was just beyond. You know, I can't express it.
They called him Pops.
They called him Pops. And we had both of them playing football. That was our time as a family. We were visiting close friends of ours, but we bought paint and we didn't use all of it. But then there was a section that I wanted to use, but I thought we're going to do it later in the year, closer to Christmas. And then we were sitting and my friend mentioned that he wanted to repaint this particular wall and whatever. So he says, no, but I've got paint to you at home. And I couldn't dare say, but hello, we're going to use this paint. So I get home and I tell him, but Liffy, we said we're going to, yes, but that, you just said now we were going to do it the end of the year. They need it now. So daar gaan we pyn toe te nou. But, you know, and that is the memories that we have of him. During COVID time, the neighbor's son called me across the wall, Auntie Nikki, and I said, yes, boy. And he says, I'm selling washing powder and stuff. I said, okay. And I asked, how much is the washing powder? And it's these, I think it was 20 liter or something, I remember correctly. And I can't remember whether they said it was $3.50 or $4, and I can't remember the price. But anyway, so now around he comes with 2 drums now, and I need to choose which one. So I think, if I remember correctly, I still chose the Ariel or something. So now Abby's also sitting there, and this poor child just going to sell me a drum of washing powder. That's all that he came for. But now he's sitting him down and he's telling him it's lockdown. Yeah. People are not working. People don't have money. Yeah. You must go and you must buy smaller packets. Yeah. And you must put it into 2 kilos and into 5 kilos. Yeah. Here's a plastic sealer here. Get somebody to print you, not just print, it must be a color picture of whatever washing powder it is, and you put it on there. And whatever, and make it affordable and presentable. Yeah. So there off goes the boy with the whole business plan, and over the arme kind bokke doen it. They also just want to sell, me
some washing powder.
He loved fishing, which I never understood because he was the most impatient man ever. I'm still getting done, and then he's in the car and waiting already, or he starts the car, we're ready to go. But he could sit at the waters for hours, whole day, hours. If we would go as a group of friends, everybody else is saying we're packing up. He would always be the one, just one last cast. And that is the one thing that my boys has taken, that love for fishing. They keep, I think, as their way, where they feel closest to their dad because they know how he felt about the ocean and about fishing. Yeah, so they still do that very often.
I said to you, and I want to repeat it, that jy en Lieutenant Colonel Kinnear, you represent the best of us. You do. Whenever we speak about the Cape Flats and being colored, it is always in terms of the worst of us. In language, to elevate the Sabella, the gang language, which for me is an affront to who we are as people. Van dit is nie wie ons is nie. But I remember exactly the day where I was when he died. And when he was killed, I should say. I know exactly where I was driving. And the reason why his death was so personal is because as a person of color living on the Cape Flats, our boys dying in our streets, our girls becoming ice macies for gangs. The biggest driver for me, what I really, by the grace of God, trust I can contribute to, is that who we are as a people will not be defined by the brokenness, but by our ability to transcend where we came from. And why his death was so personal is because here we had one of our own sons that was prepared to take the fight on, head on, that is playing out in our streets, that has become the defining thing in our politics even, where gangsterism now and organized crime has entered the highest levels of government. I knew there was something about his death. There was something about his assassination, even though I didn't serve on that portfolio. It's personal to me because the values that you represent, the sacrifice that you made as a family. So if I may say to you today, thank you for your service. Thank you. And thank you for showing us really wat kom uit Bishop Lywers uit. It's not the gangs. It's the people who transcend that lifestyle. So his death may it never be in vain. You keep on speaking. Keep on being the obstropolous woman who refuse to be quiet, because that is who we are. That is who we are. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you to your boys. We appreciate you. Thank you. I want to make a call on our public representatives, especially women that are sitting in Parliament now, that you will take the voice of Nicole Kinnear and demand that there be protection for this family, the Kinnear family, who has paid the highest price in service of our country. Let us provide them with the support that they need. We call for reform, and we pray that the President will not only make an empty promise as he did yesterday, but truly that Parliament will fast-track the reform of legislation so that whistleblowers and their families will receive the necessary support.